Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jackie, and if you're just finding me, I talk about a lot of different books, and I just wanted to bring you this little book haul, so welcome to my channel. I hope you stick around. So I have a few different books to show you, some that I got for Christmas and some that I got a little bit more recently. It's a new year. I wanted to start off the new year with some new books. So these are just some new books that I've recently gotten. Some of them are older releases. A lot of them aren't older releases, but I just wanted to share because they're beautiful to look at, and I always think it's so interesting to see what other people are hauling into their libraries. So the first book that I wanted to haul into my library is a book called Babylonia by Constanza Casati. This is actually the book of the month choice for January. So this book is about this like Babylonian society. It's Middle Eastern, it seems, and also like from the Middle Ages, from an older time. So basically everybody in this world fights for the ability to be king or queen of the throne in this country in Assyria. And our main character is part of a prophecy, and she doesn't really know anything about this prophecy. Nothing is like here to prepare her for this, but she's meant to be like the next ruler. At least that's what I got from the synopsis. I don't know too much else about this book, but I'm super excited to read it. I know it's the second book by this author, but I haven't heard anything really about the first book, or this book yet, because I know it's a newer release. It came out towards the end of 2024, I want to say. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it. I'm not sure when exactly I'll pick this up, but it sounds interesting. I love like those fights to the death, that kind of like fantasy element of this world. I love things like that usually, so it should be up my alley. I love this cover too, just like is stunning with that sword and everything, so it just made me really intrigued, and then I read about it and I wanted to pick it up. Alright, so the next books that I have to talk about that I hauled recently is The Women. So this is Kristinhannah's newest release, and I'm super excited. I've read another Kristinhannah book, The Four Winds, that I really loved. If you don't know this about me, I'm super into historical fiction. It's one of my favorite genres, so I'm super excited to pick this book up and read about it, especially because I know it takes place in the Vietnam War. And the Vietnam War is just like a time period that I don't really know that much about. I feel like there's a lot of things about it that are suppressed in the media, and we don't really learn that much about it. So I'm really like intrigued and I'm interested. I want to get into this. And I know it's about a woman's perspective in the war, which is not something that we often see. And I think it's interesting about how this 20-year-old woman goes off, she fights in Vietnam War. But I know that the majority of the book doesn't really focus on like the Vietnam War from Vietnam, from that perspective out there fighting. It's more about the aftermath of when she comes back, what she finds. I think it's really interesting that we have this discussion about mental health, and especially how people's mental health is affected by fighting in wars, and the fact that most of society just tries to treat everything like normal, like it never happens. We still find this here today. Just a lot of society likes to ignore war veterans or dismiss their struggles. I think this is going to be a very impactful read for 2025. It's something that I would like to learn more about, and I think it's very interesting to see her perspective and how she struggles to readjust to society, to coming back to living in California, living in America again after all the atrocities and the horrors that she sees out in Vietnam. Alright, so the next book that I hauled is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I know this is a book that was super popular like a few years ago. I'm super late to the game with this. I've only read one book by Taylor Jenkins Reid before, and it was a short novella called An Evidence of the Affair. I was really interested in that. I really liked it a lot when I read it, so I can't wait to read this next. Hopefully this will be one of my next reads in January, and I can join in the hype. But if you don't know, Evelyn Hugo is about this lady who is very famous in Hollywood named Evelyn Hugo. And it's about her journey through Hollywood, about her mysterious past. She meets with this journalist who is going to write a book about her life. And she like asks her to come to write this book about her life, write about just different things and clear the air and get the narrative straight. And it is a little bit about her seven husbands, but more about her experiences in Hollywood with fame, why she decides to leave Hollywood. I think this is a really interesting exploration into what it means to be famous. That's not an experience that many of us have, so I think it's very enlightening. It's very different. I kind of like the Hollywood glitz and glam of this book, but I know that we'll be seeing also some of the uglier sides of Hollywood, and I think that's important to highlight and important to talk about, honestly, because I feel like those things are so neglected and so often just like brushed to the side of the negative experiences that actors and actresses and other people in the industry can have. Especially, like, I know this brings up another book which is totally unrelated, but it reminds me of the memoir that Jeanette McCurdy wrote, I'm Glad My Mom Died, where she talks about her negative experiences in the industry. And I feel like this will be enlightening in some ways. I know it's not autobiographical, it's not nonfiction or anything, but it is interesting to see it from a fictional account and just see how she experienced things, especially because she's had like a long career within Hollywood and she's like an old Hollywood actress, so it's like you can see the changes through the decades as well. Next book that I have to talk about is another Kristin book, actually. It's Firefly Lane, and if you didn't know, there is a Netflix show based off of this book, and it's 2 seasons long. It's just like a few episodes each, so it's pretty short, but it is based off of this book right here. So I've been wanting to read this book because I watched that show and I fell in love with it, so I thought that it would be a great idea to read the story it's based off of. So this novel is about a 3-decade-long friendship between Kate Malarkey and a girl named Tully Hart. They've been friends for 3 decades, become friends as children because they are both like standing out in school. They don't really have a lot of friends. They don't have a lot of people that they connect to, and they really find this bond with each other. And it's about their stories and their lives through the decades, how they balance each other out. They're both very opposite characters, very opposite personalities, but they make a perfect friendship match. And this in some ways reminds me a little bit of my own childhood best friend and the ways that we complement each other. So I really think this will be a beautiful story of friendship, of love, of family, of what it means to be family, found family. I love found family. I love that trope whenever I find it in books. And I think that it's important to talk about stories of good friends and write these stories with really good friends. I think this is something that's very rarely actually discussed in books or written about in books, so I love any kind of book that will deepen that lore, that will add to the books out there that talk about friendships, because I think that friendships can be just as important as familial relationships and as romantic relationships in our lives. It's something that's often neglected in stories, but they're important ones too. They are part of what make us us. So I can't wait to read this. I'm super excited. This is another book that I want to pick up in January, and I want to rewatch the show after because it's amazing. If you haven't read it already, it's packs a punch. If you haven't experienced the story at all, like, just know it's deep rooted in a lot of heavy things, but it's such a good story, and I highly recommend picking up this book if you haven't yet. Watching the TV show, 100% recommend that, but I'm excited to get into this book, and I just wanted to share that. All right, so the next 2 books that I have to talk about are 2 classics, actually, and they're the really fancy Barnes & Noble editions of them. They've got these like foiled covers and stuff, really beautiful. One of these books I've already read and I absolutely love it, and I just needed to have the collector edition, and the other I haven't read yet, but I'm looking forward to getting into it. So I'll tell you about the book that I have read first. So the first one that I got is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and this book, if you don't know, you've probably been living under a rock, but it's about a scientist, Frankenstein, who brings this monster to life, and he's like experimenting and brings this monster to life, and it kind of takes on a mind of its own. So it's basically exploring the story of this monster taking on a mind of its own, and it explores these themes of what makes us human, what makes a monster truly a monster, what's, you know, what is moral, what is good, what is evil. It goes into all those themes, and it's just such a good story. I know I'm doing such a bad job explaining what it is, but it's amazing. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. Mary Shelley did a master class writing this book, and look at those edges. Look at this book. It's beautiful. But she did a master class in writing this book. It's from the 1800s too, so if you're looking into getting into more classics, that's perfect for that. I liked that it's a mix of like that classic feeling, but it's very much gothic horror. It's not super scary, but it's got those gothic elements too, and I've been wanting to read some more gothic books after I read this. But yeah, I just had to get the collector's edition. I actually got this for Christmas, but it's actually so stunning. I don't know if you can see that sheen on the book, but I highly recommend it. If you haven't given it a chance, it could be a really good way to get into Gothic fiction. All right, so on the topic of Gothic fiction, actually, and speaking of like just these like Gothic-y classic stories, another book that I wanted to share that I recently got is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So this is another like Gothic story. It's about this relationship between these two people, between Heathcliff and this woman, and she actually spurns him and she marries another man, and there's a lot of like betrayals, a lot of revenge going on in this plot between the two families, and it's giving me a little bit of Romeo and Juliet vibes in the sense that they don't get along, but very like Gothic-y vibes, and it kind of stems down through the generations. And look at this book, look at those sprayed edges. I know you can't really see on camera, but these are like purple, very deeply purple in person, and look at that sheen again. But yeah, I'm really interested in the story. I want to read more classics. It's always something that I want to get into more. This sounds like something that would be up my alley. I love Gothic fiction, and I think that this could be something that I really love. It's another darker story. I love darker classics too. I think they're like a very underrated, underread section of classics. So I want to get into this. I want to read some more of the Bronte's works, and I'm excited to read this story. Also, look at this back cover. Stunning. And I'll read you what it says on the back, but it says, "Be with me always. Take any form, drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you." And that's a quote from the story. I think it's a beautiful book. I'm super excited to have this for my collection, and I can't wait to get into this. Hopefully it'll be something that I read before the end of 2025. No promises, but here's hoping. And now I have this really, really beautiful copy to incentivize me to pick it up. That's all the books that I had to talk about. That's 6 different books that I'm adding to my collection that I got between Christmas and now in the new year. And yeah, what are some new books that you guys are interested in reading? They could be new releases or new books to your current library. Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, give this a like. And let me know what other things that I should pick up. If you like classics, if you like Gothic fiction, horror, anything like that, what are some recommendations? I'm looking to get more into this genre. And what do you think about kristinhannah books? Yeah, feel free to leave me any suggestions, any comments below. I'd appreciate it with suggestions, recommendations. I'm always down for that. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you'll have a good day wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much, and I will see you all next time.